Hello everyone and welcome. It's Shanna. So glad you're here today. Now we've got the Spring Blessings Rub-On Transfers again, and I am bringing in an eclectic mix of stuff. We're going to use this cross. I've got these Hexy gem layered dies, and these are some old ones. And I've got an old aster die set that I've die cut out a bunch of floral elements that we're going to use for this card. I'm also going to use little leaps, and I've got some older nesting dies here, and we've got some old advent calendar dies, the mushrooms, and I'm going to use this little frog here. Now, I was inspired by Tina Smith. I saw one of her videos where she used those teardrop dies, and I thought, I have those, I need to use them. And at first I thought, well, I'm not going to use those, I'm going to use these Hexy gems. And then I thought, I'm not going to do one card, I'm going to do two. And so I'm deciding to use both. But I was inspired by her and her card for this, so I want to give her credit. The design is much like a video she just ran and used the rub-on transfers. So mine are going to be different, but certainly very much got the inspiration from her. So I want to give her credit for that. Anywho, so I've got some old materials, and I don't think she probably dug through her old Advent calendars for some of the pieces that I'm using here, but I did pull in some Advent. So here I've taken the dies and I've created some frames, and we're going to get our little rub-on transfer laid down here on this largest cream-colored frame, and we're just going to lay it down on there with our popsicle stick. And I'm kind of trimming it down so that it's more even, so that it will help me to lay it down in the center. It was kind of had more paper on one side than the other, and I just thought it would help if I just trimmed it down to where it was more even, and it would help me to lay it down a little bit straighter. Plus, I am using that line on my glassboard studio mat just to square off that die or to line it up, and then to get my cross laid down on there. So I'm just using that popsicle stick and getting our cross laid down on there. I did speed it up because you can see I do a good bit of pressing. I got some new tweezers. They're gold. They're Pink Fresh Studio, and they are clean. So those just came in today, and I pulled them out of the box so I could use them. Now, one of my little flowers didn't get laid down correctly, so I'm just lining it back up nice and neat and giving it a good press. And then we're good to go. So these rub-ons look stunning. They are beautiful. So I've just got a couple of different frames here where I nested a couple of the dies together to create the frames, and I'm going to layer them up. And you can kind of see my color scheme. I tried to match my card stock and my florals and everything to the colors that are in the rub-on transfer on the cross. And I'm just going to use these frames to frame out my cross, and we'll get them laid up and glued down on there. And we're going to do a card with the frog, and it's going to be kind of similar in that we're going to use some nested frames, and we're going to bring in the old Advent calendar. And this wasn't even 25. I think it was 23 or 24. I'm not even sure which Advent calendar it's from because I didn't mark them at that time. Now this year's I've got clearly marked, and I will know that they are from 26. But the prior 2 years, I didn't pay much attention to how I stored them away once I was finished. So I'm going to get this inset in here, and it just makes a real pretty frame around there and really pulls from the color of the rub-on. I think it's gorgeous. And we're just going to get it laid down on a cream-colored top folding card base is what we're going to use. I'm just kind of cleaning up some glue around the edges. I'm going to lay that aside, and then we're going to get to work on our card. I had quite a bit of glue on my glass mat there, so I cleaned it up a little bit. And now we're going to do some assembly of flowers. Now I've got a couple different colors of cardstock that I used to die cut the aster out, and I'm using this 1 millimeter foam squares from Spellbinders so that we don't have a lot of dimension, because I'm going to layer up each layer, and so I wanted to use the smaller millimeter dimensionals. Anyway, I'm taking some vintage photo and some rusty hinge, and I'm coloring up these florals just to kind of give them a little shading, kind of like our florals on our cross have. And I'm just going to lay some color down, and then we're going to layer them up with the foam squares. And I'm going to do the first one at real time, and then the rest I'm going to speed up just so that we can kind of, it was kind of a longer video. I think it was well over 40 minutes. I was able to edit out and speed up some things to bring it down under 20. So anyway, so I think these florals, they're a little bit more orange than the ones on the cross. They're a little bit more yellow, but I think it looks nice with it. And so I'm just putting the foam squares in between them. And I've got a little circular piece for the flowers that I got from another Crafty Advent die set that was in my stash. This is an aster, and it had a different center than what I wanted for this. So I went digging in my Advent calendar and found a circle center, floral center, and I used it for this. And then the flowers on the cross have got like a even darker center. So I'm going to bring in a black gem and put in the center of this one. Now I will wind up changing it out and going with a different one when I get my other flowers done, and they'll all match. It'll be a little bit smaller, and I think it looks a little bit nicer on this flower. But anyway, so now I'm going to speed things up, and we're going to put these other flowers together kind of quickly. And basically we're going to have 3 asters, and you can see I've got some greenery in my little tray there, and we're going to add some greenery to it as well. So I'm popping these up. This foam tape is not sticking to that Distress Oxide ink that I laid on there, so I'm winding up putting it on the back of the florals and then adhering it that way, and it did take. So we're getting our centers laid down, and this is where I find some other black gems, and I change that one out, and then I add these to the centers, and then they all match. And it's a little bit smaller gem, and I like it better, but it is black. So now I've got a little scrap of brown cardstock that was left over from a card I made the other night, and I'm going to use it for my just my landing zone for my florals. Just gives me something to glue to and to position them. I've got the 2 outer ones laid down, and I'm bringing in a bigger dimensional. This one's probably a 3 millimeter, and layering it up so that I've got that 3rd flower in the center on top of the other 2. And then I'm going to just start tucking some of these this greenery that I die cut out. This came from another stamp set. I just really shopped my stash for this stuff and just brought in a bunch of different things. You know, these leaves are from a different set. The asters are a different set. The centers are a different set. Just using just whatever I have. I just kind of flipped through everything and was looking for the particular elements that I had in mind. I'm going to tuck this leaf in, and I put glue on both sides. I think I kind of get it stuck down to my glass mat if I'm not careful. So I'm going to add some more glue. I think I wind up laying it upside down and just letting it kind of dry for a little bit so that I don't get it stuck on everything. And I'm just kind of eyeballing it. That's where I flip it over, because I'm like, if I lay it down, it's going to glue to my glass mat. So I've got my, I didn't have the focal point glued down, so I need to lay that aside, let it dry a little bit, and then we're just going to bring in some foam tape and pop it up is what we're going to do. So I'll get plenty of foam tape on here, probably more than I need, but we're going to get it to where it will lay level and it won't easily bend if it's in an envelope. And then we'll get it laid down on this cream card base, and then we can add our floral elements. I think it turns out really pretty. I was really pleased with both of these cards. You know, one is kind of a faith-based card, and then the other one's kind of a playful birthday card is what we're going to do. So I was thinking about that, but the leaves were kind of hanging off the edge, so I thought if I went with this side, I could keep all of my leaves within the card, the A2 panel. And so I'm just going to bring in a more narrow strip of foam and lay it more toward the left side of the floral arrangement so that I can kind of layer it up over my over my hexagem. I think that's hexagem. Anyway, so I'm trying to get it to where my leaves are going to be on the card base, so I don't have to worry about hanging over. We've got a little bit of a hanging over, but I think it'll be okay. And I think it's really pretty. Now I did, I'm going to add some more greenery to it. And I did cut apart one of the sentiments so that I can add it to the card as well. So we'll do that as we move along here. And so I've got my sentiment, and I am going to just bring in some more cream. And I decide to flip it over because the bottom of that Rejoice sentiment has a straight edge on it. The top doesn't. So I'm going to flip it over and lay that edge on the bottom of this card base so that I can get it on there straight, and I'll have at least one straight edge when I cut this out. I will use my trimmer, but I was just trying to help me to get it laid down on there straight. And then I can just use my trimmer and trim it off, knowing that it is laid on the bottom of the card base straight. So I'm just going to cut it down. I'll grab my guillotine and we'll get it cut down, and then we'll get our sentiment added to our card. And this particular sentiment says, "Rejoice in the promise of Easter," is what it says. It's a beautiful sentiment and a beautiful card. So I'm just going to get it trimmed down, and we're going to get it laid down on the front of our card. So I'm kind of heavy on the left side of the card, so I thought I'd put the sentiment on the lower right side of it. I'm going to let it hang off our gems there, our hexy gems. And so I'm going to bring in a big dimensional to put on the right side of that, and then we'll put some glue on the left side, and it'll just help it to lay even, because I've got, several layers that we're going to cross there. So it's a good dimensional there, and we've got a nice even flat, and I think it's just gorgeous. Isn't that beautiful? Love it. So we're going to go on to our frog card, and we're going to kind of shift into a birthday themed card. I have got this frog sitting on the I don't know, mushrooms or toadstools, whatever you want to call them. And as I was digging through looking for a center to that flower, I found these mushrooms or toadstools, whatever you want to call them. And I thought they would be super cute with this die set. So we're going to get our panels created much like we did on our first card. I'll go off camera, do all my die cutting, figuring out what size I need, and we're going to bring in several panels that we can layer up, and then we're going to get to assembling this card. So you can see I've got a couple of layers, and then I've got a frame, and we're just going to get our rub-on laid down here on this red. And I was kind of worried how it would look on there, but it turned out really nice. I like how it looked, and it's going to work out really nice. So we're just going to get that transfer sheet pulled off as soon as I can. If I notice anything's lifting, I'm going to lay it back down and give it another rub so that I get every bit of my rub onto my card base here. And I'm just carefully pulling and working it a little bit at a time. And then we're going to get this carrier sheet pulled off of there, and I think it looks great. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Love it. So now we're going to lay it on this brown cardstock, and this is all the Spellbinders cardstock that I'm using here, with the exception of the cream. The cream is Hobby Lobby. And I'm going to get that laid down on there, and I've got a little cream frame where I took 2 of the nested die sets and laid them together and created the frame, and I'm going to come back in, much like I did our other card, and we're going to frame this out. And I like it. I think the cream really pops on there, and then once we get it laid down on that cream card base, it really just pulls everything together. And then when we add those little mushrooms, that greenery, it's going to be super fun. So this card base, this cardstock from Hobby Lobby is pretty thick, and it wants to lay open, so I'm giving it a good press. It's still wanting to lay open, but anyway, we're going to just glue this one down. We're not going to pop it up like we did the other one. We'll just glue this flat. I'm going to try and get it lined up on there straight, using the magnet to hold the card shut as I'm laying this down. And I have been getting into using cream cardstock lately. I historically have just been a white cardstock card-based person, but lately I have been pulling all these creams in. So I die cut the tops of the mushrooms out with the same color that I laid our little frog on, and I'm adding some vintage photo just to kind of add a little bit of interest and a little bit of dimension to our mushrooms. And we're going to get, this is kind of layering piece that we're going to layer. It's like the underneath of the mushroom, and I die cut it out in brown, and then I've used the cream for the kind of the stem, and then the cream to back the red so that it'll really pop and kind of go along with the mushrooms that are from our rub-on transfer. I think it just kind of really matches or coordinates with it. And then this is our big toadstool, and we've got our mushroom, and we've got a small one as well. I can't decide whether to call them mushrooms or toadstools, so I'm kind of going back and forth, but I think they're mushrooms. I wind up laying it on the right side of the card once I get everything assembled. So this is our little one. It's got a little bit of a different shape to it. And we're going to get it laid down on the cream card base, and then we're going to add the base to it. I did use vintage photo for both of the stems to just add some dimension and some extra interest and kind of tone them down a little bit. And then we'll get our little mushroom, and we're going to layer these up. I'm just going to put some glue on here and just kind of tuck them in there together. And then we're going to bring in our card, and I'm going to nestle them in. And I wind up going with the bottom right and just laying them down there. We're going to put some foam squares on here on the bottom because we're going to overlap those frames. And we're going to need a little bit of foam on there just to make it lay level. And so I'm going to add a little glue to the one side, and then we'll just get these laid down on there. And I think it's super cute. I think it really came together nice. I was excited when I saw that die set, knowing that I was going to work with these frogs. So I'm going to bring in some greenery, and these were actually in my trash. I had die cut out the green leaves for the other card, and I thought I need some greenery for these mushrooms. And I was looking to see if I had any green scraps that I could use some dyes and like green scrap cardstock in my trash, and when I went in there, I realized that I had just dumped some green leaves into the trash can because I was dumping some trays from previous projects, and there were these long green stems in there, and so I used those, and then I did die cut out some of those fatter leaves. Anyway, so had just thrown it out thinking I'm cleaning house, and then I dug them out and glued them on this card. So anyway, they did not go to waste. So I am just bringing in this sentiment that says, have a totally terrific birthday. And I'm going to lay it on the inside of the card, and we've got ourselves a birthday card, and I think it's super cute. And so I've been calling them frogs. Maybe it's a toad. So maybe these are our toadstools then, because we've got us some toads. I think I've called them toads on all my videos, or frogs on all my videos. So anyway, I think it's super cute. These cards, I think, turned out great. I was really pleased with them. I hope you like them. If you did, consider giving me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, I'd love to have you subscribe. I'm trying to hit a new big number. So thanks for all your help. Take care. Bye-bye.